My name is Clara Bennett, and if someone had told me that my sister's baby shower would destroy the fragile peace I'd built since my husband's death, I would have laughed in disbelief. But on that bright Saturday morning in downtown Charlotte, surrounded by pink balloons and smiling faces, my world quietly came undone. Tracy, my younger sister by 3 years, had always been the golden child. The one who could make a mess and still walk away smelling like roses. I, on the other hand, was the fixer. The one who cleaned up after her disasters and paid for her mistakes. So when she sent me that engraved invitation for her baby shower, I convinced myself to go. It's time to heal, I told myself. Family is all you have left. The event was hosted at the Omni Hotel Ballroom, the most expensive venue in the city. I walked in wearing a pale blue dress, holding a gift bag wrapped neatly with silver tissue paper. The air smelled of roses and sugar frosting. Waiters glided between tables carrying champagne flutes. Everything screamed money. And knowing Tracy, that alone made no sense. She didn't have a job, barely had rent money last I heard, and yet here she was, hosting something that looked like a royal gala. "Clara, you made it," she squealed, sweeping across the room with a glow that looked painted on. Her baby bump was perfectly framed in a silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She hugged me, the scent of her perfume sharp and deliberate. Cameras flashed as guests whispered compliments. "You look radiant," I managed, trying not to choke on the irony. "Thanks, sis," she said, her smile tight, her eyes assessing. "You've been so distant lately. It's good to see you smiling again. After everything." After everything. The words sliced deep. It had been a year since my husband, Michael, died in that car accident. The one that left me with his estate, his company shares, and the $12 million insurance settlement that haunted me more than it comforted. "Come sit near the front," Tracy said. "You'll want a good view for the surprise." The surprise. She said it like she was unveiling a miracle. I followed her to a table near the center, sitting between our mother and one of Tracy's influencer friends. Mom looked giddy, proud, glowing, the same way she used to beam whenever Tracy faked success. "She's really turned her life around," Mom whispered. "You should be proud of her, Clara." I smiled politely, but something in my chest tightened. Then the music faded. The room dimmed slightly as Tracy stepped onto the small stage, holding the microphone like a queen about to give her victory speech. The guests clapped. Balloons shimmered. I expected her to thank everyone for coming, but instead, she paused dramatically and said, "I have something important to share. Something life-changing." The room stilled, her eyes locked on mine. "Before I tell you all the name of my baby's father, there's something you all should know." My stomach twisted. She smiled, that slow, cruel smile I knew too well, and said, "Clara, my sister, your late husband Michael is the father of my child." Gasps rippled across the room like thunder. Someone dropped a glass. The clink of shattering crystal was the only sound before whispers erupted. "What?" I started, my voice breaking, but Tracy wasn't done. She held up a tablet. "I have proof," she announced. A series of photos flashed on the screen behind her. Michael and her at some restaurant, one of him handing her a gift, another of a text exchange cropped conveniently to look incriminating. "We were together before the accident," she said, her tone syrupy with fake sorrow. "He wanted to leave Clara, but, well, fate had other plans." My vision blurred, the blood roared in my ears. I could feel the guests staring, some in pity, some in delight. My mother's hand froze on the tablecloth, her smile collapsing into horror. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling. "You're lying." Tracy tilted her head. "Oh, Clara, denial doesn't suit you. You think you're better than everyone just because you inherited his fortune? But that money was never truly yours. He told me everything. And as his child's mother," she smirked, "I think it's time you do what's right. I'll need my share. 12 million should cover it." Laughter, cruel, disbelieving laughter, rippled through the room. Even the caterer froze mid-step. I looked around, seeing faces I'd known for years, all turned toward me like spectators at a scandal. I wanted to scream. To grab her by the shoulders and shake her until the lies fell out, but I didn't. Instead, I straightened my back, my pulse cold and steady. "You really thought this through, didn't you?" I said quietly. Her smirk widened. "Of course. It's time the truth came out. You've had your fairy tale long enough. What she didn't know was that I'd already seen this storm coming. Nicole, my closest friend since college, now a private investigator, had warned me. Tracy's up to something, Clara. I've seen her kind of manipulation before. Be ready. So I had been. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thin black folder. If you're done performing, I said, my voice calm despite the quake in my chest, it's my turn. Tracy's smug expression faltered. This, I said, holding up the folder, is a record of every transaction, message, and fake document you forged using my husband's name. Every single scam you tried to pull after his death, the photos you just showed. I flipped open a page, the same images, but with timestamps showing they were taken 2 years before I met Michael. Edited. Badly, I might add. The room went silent again. Liar, she hissed, her confidence wavering. I smiled faintly. You should have done your homework better. I already had forensic analysts trace everything. And since you've decided to make this a public affair, I gestured toward the door. Let's make it official. The ballroom doors opened. My lawyer, Mr. Harlan, stepped in wearing a charcoal suit, holding a briefcase. He walked straight to me, placed a hand on my shoulder, and said, "Everything's ready, Ms. Bennett." The color drained from Tracy's face. What's going on?" she stammered. "Mr." Harlan opened his briefcase and handed her a document. "Ms. Tracy Bennett," he said formally, "you're being served with an injunction and fraud notice. You've been under investigation for document forgery, identity theft, and attempted extortion." A gasp tore through the crowd. Tracy's hand shook as she read the paper. "You set me up," she whispered. "No," I said, stepping closer. "You set yourself up. I just decided not to let you get away with it this time." She backed away, eyes darting, looking for support. But the same guests who'd cheered her minutes ago now whispered behind their hands, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. Even our mother couldn't meet her gaze. For a moment, the world felt perfectly still. My husband might have died in that car crash, but Tracy had killed what little remained of family loyalty long before that. And now, in front of everyone, her empire of lies had finally crumbled. But this was only the beginning. Because the truth I held in that file wasn't just about fraud. It was about something far darker, something even she didn't know I'd uncovered yet. And when I revealed that, the real secret behind my husband's death, Tracy's world wouldn't just crumble, it would burn. The silence after my lawyer's announcement felt like it lasted forever. Tracy's lips trembled, but no words came out. I could see the panic creeping into her eyes, the first crack in her carefully polished performance. "This is ridiculous," she shouted suddenly, her voice shrill enough to make the microphone screech. "You think anyone's going to believe this nonsense? I'm pregnant, Clara. Do you really want to humiliate your own sister in front of everyone?" I held her gaze. "You humiliated yourself." Someone in the crowd muttered, "What kind of person does that?" Another whispered, "Wasn't she dating someone else last year?" The murmurs spread like wildfire, and Tracy's face blanched. She tried to glare at the audience, but the power she once held over a room had vanished. I leaned closer, lowering my voice just enough that only she could hear. "You could have kept my name out of your schemes, Tracy, but you got greedy, and greed has a way of exposing people." Her jaw tightened. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her voice breaking. I straightened. "I already did. Once." With that, I turned away and walked out, the echo of my heels cutting through the whispering crowd. Behind me, I could hear her crying. Whether out of shame or rage, I couldn't tell. Outside, the cool air hit my face like freedom. My lawyer followed, his briefcase still in hand. "You handled that better than most," he said. I nodded, though my hands were trembling. "She's not done. She'll come after me again." "She can try," he replied. "The legal system's on your side now, and we've got more than enough evidence." He was right, but this wasn't just about evidence anymore. It was about answers. Because deep down, something still didn't add up. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city lights shimmered beyond my window, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's face, smiling, then fading, the way it had the night he left for that business trip and never came home. The police had called it an accident, brake failure on the freeway. But now, After everything Tracy had done, I couldn't help wondering if it was more than coincidence. Why had she started digging into his finances before his death? Why had she suddenly resurfaced, pregnant, claiming him as the father? The thought made my stomach churn. The next morning, I met Nicole, my best friend and private investigator, at her office downtown. Her space was small but organized, with stacks of case files and a faint smell of coffee. She looked up as I walked in. "So the baby shower turned out to be a circus," she said dryly. "That's an understatement," I muttered, sinking into a chair. "I saw the video," she added, turning her laptop toward me. Someone had recorded Tracy's meltdown, and it was already circulating online. "It's going viral. She's trending under baby shower scandal." I almost laughed. Almost. "She's spiraling," Nicole said, sipping her coffee. "But that doesn't mean she's harmless. What's next?" I hesitated. I need to know if there's any truth in what she said. About Michael. Nicole's expression softened. "You think she's telling the truth?" "I think she's using a lie to hide something bigger." Nicole leaned back in her chair, eyes thoughtful. "I'll dig into it. His accident report, his financials, everything. If something's off, I'll find it." "Thank you," I said quietly. 3 days passed before she called me again. When she did, her voice was tense. "Clara, you should come to my office now." I drove there in record time. She met me at the door, a folder clutched tightly in her hands. "I pulled the full accident report," she said, her tone grim. "And I found something strange." She spread the documents across her desk. "The official report says brake failure, but the mechanic who serviced Michael's car before his trip signed off that everything was fine. No issues. And guess who paid for that car to be towed after the crash?" "Who?" I asked, my heart pounding. She pointed to the name on the invoice. Tracy Bennett. My breath caught. "That's impossible. She wasn't even in Charlotte that week." Nicole shook her head. "That's what she told everyone. But her phone GPS shows she was 2 miles from the crash site that night." I subpoenaed her location data through one of my contacts. She was there. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. She was there?" Nicole nodded. "And it gets worse. I also found a set of deleted messages between her and someone named RK. Sent the day before the accident. I recovered parts of them. Look." She turned the screen toward me. The messages were grainy but clear enough to read. "Tracy, he's leaving everything to her. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything. RK, don't worry, I have a plan. Once it's done, she'll be too broken to fight back. Tracy, make it look like an accident." I couldn't breathe. Nicole reached out, placing a hand on my arm. "I think Michael's death wasn't an accident, Clara." The world seemed to go silent. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. I had cried enough over that man. Now I was angry, angrier than I'd ever been. "She killed him," I whispered. "My own sister killed my husband for money." Nicole's voice softened. "Not just money, Clara. Power. She wanted what you had, his name, his wealth, your stability, and she found someone to help her." I clenched my fists. "Who's RK?" "Still digging," Nicole said. "But he's connected to a shell company Michael's firm once invested in. Whoever he is, he's dangerous." Dangerous. That word stuck with me long after I left Nicole's office. That night, I sat in my kitchen staring at the folder of evidence. My husband's death, my sister's betrayal, and a man I didn't know who had orchestrated it all. The grief I'd buried for a year boiled into something else, something sharp and deliberate: revenge. The next morning, I called Mr. Harlan, my lawyer. "I want to reopen the case," I said. "Michael's accident. It wasn't an accident." He hesitated. "That's a serious accusation, Ms. Bennett. Do you have proof?" "I will," he sighed. "Then I'll make a few calls. But be careful. If Tracy and this RK person had anything to do with it, they won't go down quietly. I'm counting on that." Over the next few weeks, Nicole and I worked like women possessed. She dug through bank records, traced wire transfers, and uncovered every lie my sister had built her new life on. Tracy, meanwhile, played the victim online, crying in interviews about how I'd destroyed her. She claimed the lawsuit was an act of jealousy and that I was harassing a pregnant woman. The comments sections were full of sympathy. Strangers defending her, calling me cold, heartless. But behind that public sympathy, Tracy was unraveling. Her credit cards were frozen. Her fake brand deals dried up. The legal notices were piling on her doorstep faster than she could fake another tearful post. Then one night, Nicole called me, her voice shaking with excitement. "Clara, I found him. RK. His real name is Ryan Keller. He's a financial consultant. He used to work for Michael's company." My pulse quickened. Where is he now? He owns a private firm out of Atlanta, but guess what? He's been in Charlotte for months. And he's been meeting with your sister every week. I stood by my window, the city lights glinting below. "We're going to end this, Nicole. Both of them." She hesitated. "Be careful, Clara. People like him don't just play games. They cover their tracks with bodies." I smiled bitterly. "Then let's make sure this time it's their turn to lose everything." For the first time in months, I felt alive, focused. The pain, the humiliation, the years of being the responsible one while my sister wrecked everything around her, all of it had led to this moment. She thought she'd destroyed me. But she'd only woken something in me she couldn't control. The next phase wouldn't be about exposing her lies. It would be about punishing her with the same precision she used to betray me. And when it was over, I wouldn't just take back what was mine. I'd take everything she'd ever used against me and leave her with nothing but the truth, the kind of truth that destroys. They told me to be careful. They said people like Ryan Keller didn't stumble. They were made. But risk had become a currency I was willing to spend. For months, I'd let grief calcify into something dull and constant. Now it had become a weapon. Nicole and Mr. Harlan had stitched the loose threads into a rope. The GPS pings that put Tracy near the crash, the deleted messages that mentioned making it look like an accident, and the bank transfers that showed a shadowy shell company funneling funds to a cleanup crew. It all pointed to a conspiracy, not a tragedy. The DA agreed to open an inquiry only when I promised a plan that would put both Tracy and Ryan in the same place long enough for a warrant and arrests. We needed them together and unguarded. The bait was ugly and perfect, a private settlement meeting arranged through a fake intermediary. We convinced Ryan there was a payout ready to secure Tracy's silence, the same payout that would tie up loose ends and make him untouchable. Ryan, greedy and careful, bit. He'd shown himself in Nicole's reports to prefer quick private solutions to messy public problems. He liked money that bought silence. We set the date in a nondescript conference room at an office building downtown. The mediator, actually an assistant quietly deputized by Mr. Harlan, would hand over an envelope and a signed agreement. Cameras captured every breath. The DA and two detectives sat behind a one-way mirror. Nicole and I watched from a nearby van, adrenaline working under our skin. The meeting started like a scene from a bad lawyer movie. Ryan arrived first, pressed and composed, hair immaculate, suit like armor. He carried a leather portfolio and a face that believed it had already won. Tracy arrived next, eyes rimmed red but defiant. She clutched her purse like a talisman. She didn't spot the cameras. She had not been careful enough. "Greed makes people sloppy," the mediator began. The fake settlement dripped with just enough legalese to be convincing. Ryan signed first, then Tracy. When the envelope exchanged hands, Mr. Harlan, who had been waiting in the room all along under the guise of an assistant, rose and said into the room, "Detectives, the DA will want to ask a few questions." The flash of panic on their faces was immediate and delicious. Ryan's composure cracked first. He tried to laugh it off, to charm. Tracy reached for her phone. The detectives moved like predators. "You're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and obstruction of justice," Detective Morrison said, older now but steady. The world narrowed to the metallic click of handcuffs. If you have never watched the face of someone who thinks themselves untouchable fold inward, it's a thing to behold. Ryan's mouth opened and closed. Tracy's protests were a wet sound. For a moment, all the years of being minimized, the nods, the shrugs, the way my family hung on to her every sentence, condensed into a small, silently triumphant smile I couldn't stop from rising at the corners of my lips. They were read their rights. They were escorted out. The cameras recorded everything. When news of the arrest hit, The hashtag frenzy that had once defended Tracy reversed. A justice for Michael trended. Friends who had posted virtue-signaling condolences now went quiet. My inbox flooded with messages, some congratulatory, many stunned, a few cruelly late apologies. But none of that mattered. The thing that mattered was that the truth had a sound, the quiet, mechanical phrase the detective spoke as he sealed the evidence bag. The evidence was damning. The shell company had wired funds to a tow operator who'd falsified a maintenance report on Michael's sedan. The recovered messages spelled out the plan. Make it look mechanical, have a cleanup driver remove evidence, bury it as an accident. An investigator found footage from a gas station camera an hour before the crash, a car matching Ryan's later tied to that tow operator. The more we dug, the more the neat house of lies crumbled into rubble. At the arraignment, the DA laid out the case like a careful architect, each charge a brick. The courtroom hummed with the sound of payoff and betrayal as witnesses testified. The tow operator who confessed under pressure, a former associate of Ryan who turned state's evidence in exchange for leniency, and a technician who'd admitted to doctoring vehicle records for cash. Tracy had tried to spin a narrative about being a victim of a cruel sister and a vindictive public, but the jury saw the messages, the transfers, the GPS pings. They saw a young woman who'd chosen self-interest over human life. During the weeks that followed, tabloids tried to paint me as the cold heiress, but courts are unforgiving to conspiracy. Ryan's arrogance turned into frantic bargaining with his lawyers, then into quiet, sullen compliance. Tracy's bravado evaporated into small court-approved statements that did little to help her case. In the end, they both pled guilty to multiple counts in exchange for reduced sentences, a bargain that left them with felony records, years behind bars, and no access to the funds they hoped would secure their escape. My family's response was predictable and finally honest. Mom called once, a single tremulous message that asked if we could talk. I listened to it twice, then deleted it. She'd been in the middle between two daughters for years and had chosen comfort over justice. Dad sent a letter with the same defensive tone he'd used at the reception. He wanted to reconcile once things settled. I did not reply. I needed no argument, no children's explanations. I needed peace, and their attempts at placation now reeked of the same entitlement that had cost Michael his life. After the legal dust settled, the estate issues that had been hanging like a storm cloud suddenly dissipated. With the charges resolved and Ryan's and Tracy's assets frozen, Mr. Harlan navigated the probate court with a clean, professional knife. Michael's will, updated and ironclad, named me executor and a beneficiary of key assets. Not because I'd fought for it in the glare of public attention, but because it had always been his choice. In quiet rooms, away from flashing cameras, I made the decisions he would have wanted. I sold toxic investments, donated to charities Michael had admired, and set up a foundation in his name to fund road safety research and support for victims of fraud and domestic deception. People ask if getting justice was satisfying in a way that healed anything. It didn't heal the rawness of his absence, nor did it bring him back. What it did was reconstruct a life from the wreckage of what happened. It allowed me to sleep again without replaying the worst moment. It let me stand in the sunshine without feeling like the wind might carry a whisper of betrayal. As for Tracy and Ryan, their sentences were a public legal rebuke that stripped them of the illusions they'd built. Watching the news coverage of them led away in handcuffs didn't bring joy so much as a solemn, exhausted relief. They had gambled with other people's lives, and the bank had finally called in the debt. The hardest part came last, telling my family why I couldn't be part of their lives. Not now, maybe not ever. It's cruel to love people who choose the easy path. I remembered the long nights coding while my sister practiced her smile, the dinners where my accolades became background noise, the way my mother's praise always turned toward the loudest voice in the room. I wasn't a villain for stepping away. I was a woman reclaiming boundaries long overdue. Months later, back in the studio at work, I watched my team launch a new feature, something Michael would have admired for its elegant engineering. It felt like a small, private miracle. At home, I kept a photograph on my desk. Michael laughing in a summer market, his grin wide and careless. I talk to that photograph sometimes. Not because I expect a reply, but because speaking keeps him real. People change a lot of things to get something: status, money, attention. Sometimes the change destroys them. This story ended with me rebuilding out of the ashes they tried to make from my life. I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted accountability. I wanted truth. In the end, I got it. Messy, imperfect, and painfully costly. If there's anything I learned through all of this, it's that you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be the golden child to matter. You need only to be honest with yourself, to let the right people in, and to refuse to fund the small betrayals that, over time, become monstrous.